I think that's one of the things that makes Head Smashed In perhaps the greatest and best buffalo jump ever discovered and ever built by Native people. And it's all these little components fall together. Many other jumps had a flat land surface that led to a steep cliff. So you had the steep cliff, which is obviously a necessity for a buffalo jump, but you had a wide open plain behind that. So how do you control these animals? How do you round them up and move them? You can build your drive lanes, but you have nothing to use as cover. You have nothing to use as a channel or a valley to help you. When you look around Head Smashed In deep in the gathering basin with these huge rolling hills, these deep valleys between them, and then finally this one very broad prominent channel that leads right to the jump, you can just see that picture all start to fit together. People would have arrived here maybe days ahead of time, looked deep into the valley and seen herds way off in the distance. They may have been kilometers away at the time. There's no problem with that because the Head Smashed In basin is literally made up of a bowl-shaped depression, which the hunters can use the high ground to their advantage, circle around the herd, and then start moving them very gently, very deliberately towards the end of the gathering basin down here where the V-shaped funnels of rocks are. And this might have lasted days, and that's fine. It's all a very gentle coercion, because one of the things that was very important was to make sure you didn't stampede the herd. You don't want them to run early. We all think of a buffalo jump as this great pouring stampede of animals over the cliff, and indeed it was, but only at the very last moment. That was one of the last things the hunters did. The most important thing was to have these animals stay together as a group and not panic and not run away. So they moved them gently, deliberately, coaxing them, luring them into the gathering basin, and then eventually pulling them into the funnel using these buffalo runners. And once they start to get them into this V-shaped funnel, now they can really start to apply some pressure from the sides with the people who are lined up along these lanes. We've seen these rock piles, they're tiny, and you think, well, how could they have served this purpose? But we know because brush and dung and chips and other things were added, they now start to form a more formidable structure on the landscape. And we think what happened was these things, as they fluttered in the wind, and you can see that that would be a prominent thing here at Head Smashed In almost any time of the day, almost any time of the year. These things would literally blow and move in the wind and provide a sense of motion, which might look very much like a human being standing here waving, saying, don't come up here. You need to avoid this place. And imagine a continuous line of these waving, shuddering structures on the landscape. And to the relatively weak eyes of the buffalo, I think they could look upslope. All they see is trouble. They don't know what that is. They don't like it. They don't want anything to do with it. And so they veer down again into the bottom of the valley, and they maintain their progress towards the buffalo jump from down in the bottom. If they go up the other side, they're met with exactly the same reception. Hunters up there waving, the drive lanes themselves providing a sense of motion through brush waving in the wind, and that would again deflect the herd down into the bottom of the valley. It would have been a remarkable process to see this thing in action. I often have dreamed that I could have been here just once and watched these hunters manipulate the landscape, manipulate the bison herds in the fashion that they did. It's truly humbling to think that they knew so much about the animal, its sense of taste and smell and reaction to wind, reaction to predators, and they managed to put all that together into this package and lay out this incredible structure on the landscape. I've often used the analogy of kind of like a map. They literally built these stone maps on the landscape to drive the herds towards their destination. And if you and I could hover above this in a balloon and look down, we would see this intricate lane system. It's not just one lane or two. There's actually many of them out here. We just can't see them all from any one location. But if we could hover in the air, we would actually see much more of this system and realize these people had the ability to think through where the animals are going to move, where the danger points are, where do we need to protect them from escaping. And they put together this enormous and elaborate map. I sometimes am kind of boggled by the fact that we as human beings seem to celebrate what ancient people in the past have done on a sense of scale, on a sense of grandeur. The bigger something is, the more imposing it is, then the grander it is as a monument to our species. And so we flock to see the pyramids, and we flock to see Stonehenge and the Parthenon and the Leaning Tower of Pisa and the Great Wall of China. And yet when we look around at what these very humble and unknown. Plains Indians did, unknown in terms of their names. We don't know any of them. We don't know their names like we do many of the people who built famous monuments elsewhere in the world. And yet they built these incredible, elaborate networks of rocks on the landscape. They just didn't happen to pile it up in a great big mass that we can come and visit and sort of be in awe of like you can at a pyramid. So it seems as if we pile rocks up in a great heap, then we marvel at how ingenious our species is. But if we lay them out in an incredible network on the ground for the purpose of driving animals to their deaths so that we can feed ourselves and our people, somehow that doesn't seem to register on our map of cultural sophistication. But I think very much it should. I think it's a remarkable achievement. That's a good girl.